Welcome to On the Middle East, the podcast of the award-winning media service Al Monitor, where each week we talk with the decision makers and thought leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in the Middle East. I'm Andrew Parasaliti, president of Al Monitor, and our guest this week is Al Monitor columnist Kadri Gursel. Kadri is also a member of the board of Reporters Without Borders and the TV debater and commentator on Halk TV in Turkey. He has previously had columns at the Turkish dailies Melayet and Cumhuriyet, and prior to that was a reporter for Agence France Presse. In October 2016, Kadri was detained and jailed for 11 months in the operation against Cumhuriyet. He documents his ordeal and the decay of press freedom in Turkey in his book. In Turkish, the English translation, I believe, is I'm Sorry for You Too, published in November 2018. While working for the AFP in 1995, he was kidnapped in the Turkish southeast by the PKK. He recounts his experiences in captivity with the group in his book titled Those of the Mountains, published in 1996. Again, that's the English language title. My conversation with Kadri Gursel about Turkey's policies related to the Russian-Ukraine war, the US and NATO, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and what to expect in the 2023 Turkish elections. That conversation begins now. Kadri, welcome to On the Middle East.
Hello, Andrew, and thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you on the program. Let's start with the Russia-Ukraine war and what I've called President Erdogan's star turn in global diplomacy. That is his efforts to try to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. For now, this seems like mission impossible, but the effort is commendable. And it seems to me this effort is driven by national interest, as the war is exacerbating Turkey's already difficult economic situation, and opportunity, as Erdogan is interestingly, I should say, well positioned to mediate because Turkey has good relations with both countries.
Erdogan's Turkey has a long tradition of mediation. They have a capacity, and they use this capacity to make their political capital bigger, and this is quite understandable. And this is quite a good response to the post-Cold War era in the region. So Turkey opted to relativize its ties with the West, and then opt or choose to follow a more independent foreign policy. And the mediation was a good answer, good instrument, I think, in this context. But with these two countries, with both Russia and Ukraine, Turkey has a very important ties. Turkey is dependent to Russia on energy issues, and Turkey has very interesting ties with Ukraine, particularly on defense issues, for example. And these two countries are very important countries. So, and then a conflict in between the two would definitely hurt Turkey, and Turkey has nothing to gain, I think, in midterm, in long term, out of this conflict. So, Turkey has reason to mediate and has a capacity to use in order to mediate in between the two. But a third reason can be added, I think, because of Turkey having consumed its diplomatic capacity in the course of the 2010 until 2020. In 2020, Turkey's foreign policy has turned, has been militarized because of this impasse in the diplomatic level. So Turkey has to now. It's an opportunity for Turkey to catapult itself to the world stage again by mediation. And Russia and Ukraine has good reasons for not to say no to Turkey when they are asked from Ankara to come together. For example, last time in Antalya, and because both sides do not want to lose Turkey to the adversary, so both sides also value Turkey more. I think Turkey is an important country for Russia and for Ukraine even more important because these two countries do make their maximum effort not to lose Turkey to the other side. So it's I think very good context for Turkey to use in this regard.
One of the sticking points between Russia and Turkey with regard to Ukraine is that Turkey supplies drones to Ukraine, which have been instrumental in the Ukrainian defensive military effort. Why does Turkey supply drones to Ukraine?
Well, Turkey has a growing armament or defense industry, and want to publicize it. Want to publicize. That's, I think. I don't think that the move was a move considering the conflict or taking into consideration the conflict in between Russia and Ukraine. And I think this sale of drones in quantity was not a purchase for Ukraine to use against Russia, to alter, to change the equilibrium and the course of the war, and Turkey has sold to many countries, including Ethiopia, for example, and didn't behave as a responsible supplier so far, because these countries have inner conflicts, putting the central governments against against some separatists or other groups like in Ukraine, and I think selling drones to Ukraine wasn't a move made against Russia. It was a move made just for the sole Turkish interests to make their defense armament industry, to promote their defense armament industry, and to gain some reputation around the world. That's it. And I think in 2020, in 2020, in many occasions in Syria, in Libya, and in Azerbaijan, these drones have demonstrated, they proved themselves well. And then this time in Ukraine, they served to the Turkish interests, and they gain a well-founded reputation. But Ukraine doesn't use these drones at industrial level, and maybe they would have taken a doctrine from Turks, but I think in quantity they can't change the course of the war. But they made a great they publicized Turkish drones well so far in the war, but I'm not so sure that they would they would alter the course of the war.
We see divisions within Europe, Austria, Germany, hesitant to impose energy sanctions on Russia. How far will Turkey go along with the West and Europe and NATO countries in imposing sanctions? And will it abide by broader sanctions? Would it even consider cutting off energy imports and sanction Russian oligarchs? Or can these oligarchs and their money find a safe haven in Turkey?
Turkey now is following a policy of active neutrality. And this policy has many reasons. They want to maintain their good relations with Russia. These relations are at many levels, particularly there's an individual level. These relations have been personalized in between Putin and Erdogan. And Turkey has become dependent to Russia in energy terms, not only for natural gas, but also for nuclear. There's a nuclear plant which is under construction in south of Turkey. So Turkey cannot sanction Russia, even it wants to, but it cannot, simply because it's dependent to Russia. Second, this administration, Erdogan, cannot sanction Russia a year ahead when there is an election, crucial election, a year later in Ankara, in Turkey, excuse me. And this would be extremely harmful for Turkey. Already the contraction in Russian economy will harm Turkish economy so bad, and same does apply for Ukraine. And if the European economy contract because of the sanctions they put against Russia, this will harm Turkey too. So Turkey is already harmed by this conflict, and this harm cannot exceed unacceptable levels, politically speaking, because it can cause the political power to the incumbent, Mr. Erdogan. It's impossible for Turkey to do so, given the fact that they consume their reserves. Now the central bank reserves are in the negative, and so full stop. But this policy is not sustainable for the midterm. Turkey is following this policy of active neutrality, but if we consider that this is a new Cold War of different type, but it's a new Cold War, there will be an ideological front. There is already an ideological front, and in this war, and there is a juxtapositioning of many fronts, and Turkey cannot ignore the new realities, and Turkey will not be able to manage this policy of active neutrality in the mid run and long run. So I think until 2023, this policy can be handled by Erdogan, but we will see. I don't think that is sustainable.
It seems to me that the war and Turkey's mediation role has highlighted Turkey's key role as a NATO alliance member. And that relationship between Turkey and NATO and between Turkey and the United States had been singed by Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. Where does the S-400 issue stand? Is Turkey willing to shelve the missiles, return the missiles in order to make good in terms of its relationship with the United States, which seems to be improving? There was an agreement a week or two ago regarding a new strategic mechanism, I think they called it, for dialogue between the US and Turkey on a wide range of issues. So there have been positive steps since the war in terms of US-Turkey relations, but the S-400 issue is still out there. How do you see that from Turkey?
We have to go back to 2017 and see the reasons of this move of purchasing S-400 systems from Russia. Ankara has made a huge strategic mistake by purchasing this system from Russia just after the coup attempt July 2016 against Erdogan. In the wake of it, Turkey, Ankara, and Erdogan as a person turned immediately to Russia. And the first foreign visit that Mr. Erdogan has made was to Russia to meet Mr. Putin in St. Petersburg, and the first signature for the purchase of S-400 was made in April 2017. So S-400, the purchase of S-400, is the consequence of a psychological disorder, of a distress, of a vital threat perception from the coup attempt. And we have to admit, we have to repeat that this time, Erdogan has saw the United States behind the Gülenist movement, which they were accused for staging the coup. And as the leader of this movement and the cadre of this movement were, stationing or living or, were in the United States for a quite long time, they kept somewhat responsible the United States and turned to Russia for safeguards and for somewhat retaliations. I think this was a retaliation but doomed to fail in the long term. And we are at the end of it, because given the new reality of the new Cold War, there is no Eurasian alternative left for Turkey. There has never been a Eurasian alternative, but even as a rhetoric, it's over. The game is over. So, and Turkey has always been technically a NATO member. Now, I think Ankara understood that this S-400, they understood this long ago. That's with this S-400 issue, Turkey's armed forces and particularly air forces deterrence couldn't be safeguarded for the next 10-15 years, and under the Katsa sanctions, there must be a way to overcome the crisis of S-400, and I think that the hour of the truth has come, and there will be a solution, because for this S-400 they will be shelved forever under the US supervision. This sounds to me the best feasible option, that two parties would take. And then Turkey has paid a bitter price for purchasing this strategic missile systems from Russia by being, discarded from the joint F-35, joint production of F-35. And this fifth generation fighter planes that Turkey badly needs now creates the lack of them creates an important gap to be covered by purchasing F-16s as a temporary solution. I think Turkey realigned itself strategically again with the Western alliance, given the fact that there is that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or Beijing or Moscow are not alternative at the rhetorical level anymore.
Kadri, let's stay on foreign policy. We've been covering Turkey's offer to open a dialogue with the Syrian government while also reinforcing Turkey's positions and proxy forces in Syria. Is it realistic to consider that Ankara and Damascus could bury the hatchet? And if so, how would you see that negotiation proceeding? Obviously, there is a big economic incentive for Turkey. It houses 3.5 million Syrian refugees.
Well, it's a big issue for Turkey. The refugee question is a crisis of national dimension. It's a national crisis right at the moment, and to keep this crisis, the situation of crisis, checked or controlled or manageable, Turkey has to have a say on Syria issues. And to have a say on Syria issues, Turkey needs to maintain a military force in Syria. That's the way to manage that's the way to control the damage so far done by this ill-planned and ill-implemented Syria policy since the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring 2011. So I think Turkey, run by Erdogan or someone else, or some other political force, or today's opposition, will have to maintain its military force in Syria until a negotiated solution will be found, and agreed upon. So any early withdrawal from Russia without the world reaching a political settlement for the question, for the conflict in Syria, would harm Turkey's interests vitally and strategically. And Turkey doesn't need to be seen as a defeated and weakened force. So they have the capacity to maintain their armored forces, in Syria. And Russia has a limited capacity to push Turkey out of Syria. So there is an equilibrium already, built in this regard. And I think this equilibrium will go on. And the key point is Idlib. And Turkey has to control this, jihadists, armored Islamist groups, for them not to, alter the situation, destabilize the situation more by provoking Russian and Syrian, reaction militarily. So so far so good, I think, and Turkey has reached its limits too, because remember, coming to Kurds, to YPG, remember that in the autumn of 2021, we were hearing a lot about rumors that Turkey would launch a military operation against Kobani and districts or regions around Kobani, but it didn't happen. So will it happen, or could it happen again? I don't think so, because these kind of operations do not pay off, domestically. Will not help Erdogan administration to get the upper hand, in domestic terms. So I think this situation will go on until the moment of a negotiated to start a negotiation to solve the Syria crisis will come.
From Erdogan's perspective, does a solution simply include Syrian government sovereignty over those areas that are currently administered by Kurdish autonomous forces?
Well, look, it depends on the American inclusion in the context. As long as the Americans will have their endorsement and support to Syria Kurds and control over the Syria Kurds, I think a kind of Kurdish option solution, including Kurds into the solution, will be feasible, and then I think Russia will insist Kurds not to go, take a separatist drive or separatist course in this regard, not to divide Syria. And for Ankara, keeping Syrian integrity intact is I think is a prerequisite in this term, because if not, they would easily anticipate that means Kurdish autonomy, and a Kurdish autonomy would be very problematic for Turkey. They would not accept it. So I think a greater kind of appeasement can be found for Kurds in Syria, or the question can be kept frozen for at least for at least a decade, maybe. And because this is not easy to solve, the Syria problem. This Ankara will, if the government will change, if Erdogan will lose elections in 2023, the new political power will certainly recognize Damascus and will talk to Damascus, and this can change the situation in this regard. But until 2023, I don't expect any new move from Ankara, because the situation, the de facto situation right now, I think, is the less harmful in this regard, because it keeps the popular base of the jihadi groups in Idlib. It does not exacerbate Turkey's Syrian refugee problem, and it's a manageable situation for right now. And I don't think Turkey's and Turkish-Russian relationship have always been compartmentalized, and I think that there will be no spillover. The exacerbation in Ukraine will not spill over to Syria, and because Syria has a different reality, and both sides, Turkey and Russia, recognize that the reality is different, and because Russia's capacity is limited in this regard in Syria, and Turkey has somewhat a important capacity to punish Syria if some limits would be exceeded, as they have shown this in February 2020. And then the first use of TB2 Bayraktar armored drones was very efficient and very how to say, harmful on Syria Arab army. So I think there is an equilibrium, but not sustainable in the midterm. I don't think that the situation will change for a foreseeable future in Syria in 2020, in 2022, this year, because all actors are very busy right now with something else.
Erdogan has been consistent that the U.S. backed and mostly Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, are essentially the Syrian franchise of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, which both Washington and Ankara consider a terrorist group. What is the latest on the Kurdish question, and how do you see that playing out, not just with regard to the PKK, but also relationships between Kurds and Turks and in the social context, and also the political context in terms of the Kurdish political parties?
Turkey's Kurdish question is now actually unsolvable without the inclusion of great powers having intervened in Syria and gained a status of protectors of Kurds in Syria from different angle. Let's admit first that Turkey's Kurdish question is unsolvable right now, but Turkey can be democratized, and this would change the equilibrium a lot, I think. And then this democratic Turkey would have an upper hand to deal with its own internationalized Kurdish question. But for now, Turkey has no other option to keep the de facto situation unchanged. So yes, this PKK offshoots in Syria should not gain more. They must be controlled and contained, and situation must be tamed in this regard. Turkey's Kurdish question has become a part of a greater Syria question, which is in fact very jeopardizing Turkey's situation in this regard. So and militarily speaking, there is a military equilibrium right there, and we should not forget that the United States did not engage Kurds of Syria or PKK offshoots in Syria politically. They only engaged them. They only fomented this partnership militarily. There is no political guarantees that are given by Americans to Syria Kurds. And this is an important point that sides would not underestimate. So Americans would easily change their political standing according to their according to the change in the geopolitical theater, change that would occur. So let's not forget that America did help Kurds because Kurds were fighting against ISIS in Syria mostly, and Turkey has prepared the terrain for the American intervention in this regard. So if we reverse this logic, we have to address I think Ankara has to address to the core issue, has to address to its the reason why, you know, the Kurdish question has so far badly why it's so badly exacerbated and got out of control of Ankara. And for instance, all of these are intermingled, and there is a quite strong interaction in between Syria question and Turkey's Kurdish question. And America's standing point, you know, and would America continue to provide its support to Syria Kurds, which is seen as a providing support to PKK by Ankara, by the way, and which is an important problematic against developing better relationship between the United States and Turkey. Well, maybe this stalemate would be solved as one big actor would change its position, but changing position, for instance, by Turkey would not help. But you know, democratizing Turkey would help Turkey in the mid and long run. But we need to see Russia or America changing their position, and thus would help. That would help Turkey to develop a new approach to its, you know, Syrianized Kurdish question at the end of the day. For instance, there's a stalemate, but this stalemate is manageable. For instance, just for instance, until the new, you know, tilt, until the new tilt in the status quo in the region.
Erdogan is planning a trip to Saudi Arabia, and this is part of his reset with Arab countries and an initiative that so far included outreach to Egypt and the United Arab Emirates. But Saudi Arabia is another level, given that until recently, Turkish courts had pursued the murder charges for the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. That case is now dropped and the trip is planned. What do you expect to come out of the visit, and how do you see Turkey-Saudi Arabia relations evolving?
Well, there is a model already. This will evolve according to how United Arab Emirates Turkey relations have evolved so far. And as we have to admit that there is a tandem in between these two Gulf countries regarding with issue, including Turkey's Middle Eastern approach, it's quite foreseeable that relations between Saudi Arabia and Turkey are normalizing in a quite dramatic way. Why it's dramatic? Because, you know, it's sad to see that, you know, to say that my country's relationship with a very important actor in the region is normalizing, is a dramatic and in a very harmful way, is meant that, you know, Saudi Arabia challenged Turkey in 2018, or more particularly MBS and his entourage have challenged Turkey by the killing of Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi Arabia consulate, and this was a real, you know, threat and punishment for what Turkey has followed as a, you know, as a Ihwan-like foreign policy. I don't say pro-Ihwan, Ihwan-like foreign policy, because this is how was it seen, you know, from a distance. Turkey's foreign policy since the beginning of the Arab Spring has been Ihwanized, because they were, you know, they were dreaming about a a Eastern Mediterranean basin run by Ikhwani movement from Libya, Tunis to Egypt and Palestine, Syria, and including Turkey, and Turkey on top of it. Turkey as the leader of this Ikhwan, so-called how to say, as in a pejorative meaning, confederate, brotherhood. That was the dream, and this dream has been shattered by the coup in 2013 in Egypt. But it was hard to swallow for Erdogan. This defeat, was very big. And that's why they continue to harbor Muslim Brotherhood, and they continue to support and mentoring Muslim Brotherhood in Libya, in other places, and they follow, this policy of regime change in Syria. And then at the end of the day, this policy has consumed itself and proven unsuccessful, proven unfruitful at all. And then Turkey has created a alliance against itself in the region. This alliance brought together very strange bedfellows, be it Israel, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Greek Cypriots, Greece. And then this was for Turkey, this was a total isolation. And this was unmanageable. This was unsustainable for Turkey, for such a great country, important country in the region. And militarization of Turkish foreign policy didn't succeed as well either. And at the end of the day, they have to change it, and they have decided to normalize their relations with the region. And 2021, 2022, we witnessed this, steps of normalization. And with Saudi Arabia, this normalization cost Turkey a very, very heavy moral price, moving the Jamal Khashoggi murder trial case to Saudi Arabia, which is, I think, a very heavy-handed coup, I think, hit in this regard, because it gives the impression that to the other world, to the third parties, that Turkey is so badly squeezed and cornered that both diplomatically and economically, they can give any concession, they can make any sacrifice, and it can capitulate itself for a benefit, for a price. So it's so bad for Turkey to be seen to be labeled like such a country in badly need of, assistance. And I'm sad for the country, but I am also happy at the same time that Turkey is normalizing its relationship with its region. But the heavy prices, but with the heavy price that we are paying right now, and these heavy prices are paid for the heavily wrong foreign policies that this administration, that Erdogan and his cohort has followed so far.
Kadri, we are just about out of time. I wanted to ask one last question on domestic politics. Elections are scheduled for June 2023. The opposition parties have tried to rally and show a united front. The economy could become even worse. You've talked about this today, given the consequences of the Ukraine war. Do you expect Erdogan and the AKP to hold on to power? And how do you see domestic politics in Turkey and electoral politics playing out?
Well, let me put in this way, that Turkey is very close to provide a remarkable example of an electoral transition from competitive authoritarianism to democracy. And because for the opposition to win, we need a political power which is losing, and Erdogan is losing finally at the end of the day. And the core reason there is a meltdown. First to say, slow but constant meltdown in the political support, popular support to the incumbent. But the meltdown, the reason of the meltdown is the current economic slowdown that Turkey is going through since 2018, and it will remain there. The meltdown will remain there. This slowdown, the crisis in Turkish economy is not solvable in the foreseeable future. So despite the fact that, Mr. Erdogan controls the state apparatus and judiciary and the media, etc., this time I think Turkey will stage an example without precedent in the world stage, and Erdogan, being in a total impasse, will not be able to change the course of this political process, because it's deficits are there that which have caused the crisis are there. It's a perfect crisis and are structural, and it can't address to the root cause of the crisis. The Erdogan can't address the root cause of the crisis. There's a classical remedy to solve economic crisis, and this remedy requires, for example, political power to build trust. They can't. It requires devolution of power in order to build trust. For inviting an economy czar, for example, they can't. They can't reform their dubious public procurement and tender regime. They can't let auditing boards to do their job properly and efficiently. They can't establish the rule of law. They can't abandon to use the judiciary as a political tool. As some, they are totally in an impasse. They can't ratchet up this competitive authoritarian regime to a full authoritarian one, because they don't have the ability, the capacity to sponsor, to manage, or to finance bad governance. They don't have energetic resources. They don't have, and they can't take the course of democratization. If they take it, they will lose power. So I think this time, at the end of this 20 years long period in political power, I think this political power is doomed to fail at the first elections, despite the fact that they control the state, and they don't have any option to not recognizing their electoral defeat, not postponing the elections because of a war-like situation, so on. So I think what are they doing right now about Ukraine? There's a long year ahead. I don't think that the crisis in Ukraine will help Erdogan to ease his situation. On the contrary, in the midterm, the situation will be harder because of this economic fallouts.
Thank you for joining us today on the Middle East, and for all of your contributions to Al Monitor over the years. You were one of the members of the Turkish Pulse from the very beginning, about 10 years ago. And it's a pleasure speaking with you today and getting your thoughts on what's happening in Turkey.
Once again, thank you very much for having me, Andrew. It was a pleasure to share my view with your audience.
We will return after this break.
I'm Elizabeth Hagedorn, and I'm the State Department correspondent at Al Monitor.
And I'm Joe Snell. I'm Al Monitor's video editor. Let's admit it, this past year has been difficult to stay on top of the news and sift through what's accurate and what's misleading. Let Al Monitor help you.
If you care about the Middle East and North Africa, you should consider listening to Al Monitor's audio series On the Middle East with Andrew Parasalidi and Amber Zaman, and On Israel with Ben Caspi. You can now watch our newest video podcast, Reading the Middle East with Gilles Capel. You can subscribe to these series on your favorite podcast platforms.
And through a host of free daily and weekly newsletters, we offer a range of perspectives with the highest journalistic standards. You can subscribe to these newsletters at almonitor.com.
As an award-winning media service headquartered in Washington, D.C., Al Monitor has a network of over 160 contributors around the world.
So if you haven't done so already, be sure to visit almonitor.com, where you can find all of these newsletters and podcasts along with first-class reporting and analysis.
Thanks to our guest Kadri Gursel and our production team of Beowulf Rockland and Rosabelle Hine of Two Squared Media Productions. We will be back next week, and if you haven't done so, please sign up for all 3 of our Al Monitor podcasts at your favorite podcast platform. Reading the Middle East with Gilles Capel, whose guest this month is the legendary French architect Jean Nouvel, designer of the Institut du Monde Arabe, the Louvre Abu Dhabi, and many other amazing structures. And On Israel with Ben Caspit, where this week Ben talks with Israeli cyber master Nadav Safrir. And of course, this podcast, On the Middle East, where Amber and Zaman will be here next week with another decision maker or thought leader in the region. Thank you all for listening, and please keep up with all of the news and trends in the Middle East at almonitor.com.